Sally Walthall, and today we are going to talk about effective relationship building. So, to get into the relationship building, let's first talk about the five premarital predictors of marital happiness. So, the first predictor of marital happiness is compatibility potential. So, this is how you and this person fit together based on your personality traits, your values, your interests. So, compatibility is key in having a happy marriage, having that connection with one another, and knowing that your personalities are compatible and not necessarily combative, having values that line in together your core values, your beliefs, religious beliefs, family values, and then your interests. Not that you have to have the exact same interests, but having that commonality or being willing and open to explore each other's interests and just creating that environment that is unified. Let's look at the second. This is relationship skills. A lot of us going into a relationship, we struggle to know how to communicate and be open. A lot of people struggle with this due to past hurts, due to their upbringing. Maybe they had parents who were very closed off emotionally and they didn't share their emotions. Or you have someone who was raised in a home where they were completely open, they shared everything, there were no boundaries. So you can kind of have both of that in a relationship, and you want to make sure that there is this balance, and that the communication is respectful. There's empathy, there's active listening, and then being able to resolve conflict is so important to have in developing those relationship skills. The third is patterns from other relationships. So often we develop patterns from others that we have been romantically involved with, or even non romantic relationships. So developing patterns from the parents' upbringing, friendships play such a key role and can have such an impact. So, really understanding those patterns and how they um, kind of make that person, and paying attention to those patterns and understanding that person and how their past relationships or present relationships impact them. Number four is, of course, the family patterns and background. So, this is the parental marriage quality, family interaction patterns, the expression of affection and emotion. Again, kind of going back to the dynamics in the home. Maybe they were raised in a home where there was not a lot of affection. No one really showed emotion. You basically just had to suck it up. If something happens, you don't cry. You're not allowed to really be angry or sad. And so there are, unfortunately, a lot of people raised in homes where there is a lack of affection or emotion. So knowing that quality within a family background is key and something to pay attention to, because ultimately you're marrying into that family, and that person it was impacted by the quality of their parents' marriage. And not to say that you can't be with an individual who comes from an unstable background or a single parent background. No, but just knowing those patterns, knowing those backgrounds will significantly help in the relationship and understanding your partner, understanding one another, and being able to just moving forward, what patterns of behavior are you going to bring into the relationship, and what do you want to work on moving into a marriage? And the fifth and final is character and conscious traits. This is having a mature conscience and emotional well-being. And a lot of people are led by their conscience, but it's not always good. We can have these it's about the brain mapping. What is our brain? How does our brain function? And if we have a poor conscience and we're not aware, and there is not good emotional well-being, that can be detrimental to the relationship. So it's very important to have that maturity there. Let's move into relationship attachment model. So the relationship attachment model basically shows the different levels of attachment in the relationship, and there's 5 main components. And it's knowing, trusting, relying, committing, and touch. So let's go a little bit further into describing these different models of attachment. So as we look at knowing, this slider that was on the far left is used to measure how well you really know someone. So the farther that this bar moves up, it signifies the more intimate the relationship is and personal the relationship is. So you really want to, as you develop this relationship, you want that bar to start moving up. You want to start growing and getting to know them. And the more you know them on an emotional level, you build that intimacy, you build that personal relationship. So getting to know one another is so important in the beginning stages of that relationship. Let's go into trust. So trust kind of comes with getting to know one another. The more you know one another, the more you begin to trust one another. And so this represents a deeper, positive, confident trust. This also comes with having openness and honesty in the relationship. So to build trust, that communication is key. Communicating how you feel, communicating things that you struggle with, being honest about things even when they're hard to talk about. And that's something that builds over time. Obviously, you know, on a first date, you're not just going to be completely open and honest. It's one of those things that you build as you get to know one another. And then being able to rely on one another. This is the third slider. So the greater that you can, the greater extent to which you rely on this individual to meet your needs. So this is one of those components where ideally we want to be pretty self-sufficient going into a relationship where we're not completely relying on that individual to meet our needs, because we are human and ultimately we will let each other down. But in another sense of relying, knowing that we can rely on them to commit, relying on them to play that role in the relationship, to build. So both individuals are relying on one another to meet those needs, in the sense that, hey, I can rely on this person. They are someone that I know is committed. We're committed to one another. We are committed to working through that conflict resolution. So relying has different definitions, but here we're looking on relying. Or is this person reliable in the relationship? Do we rely? And then going on to commitment. So this is the level of commitment you have established within your relationship with this person, and it rises to signify the greater levels of commitment, which is pretty much a given. Touch, this is signifying the increase in passion, chemistry, the sexual contact that you and your partner have. So pretty much all of these go hand in hand, going back to, you know, having that, knowing that person and developing that trust and relying and committing, and then having that physical intimacy at the end. So now going into the different components of getting to know. The first important thing is you have to know your compatibility potential. So Van Epp says a successful relationship consists of a blend of similarities and differences in personalities, backgrounds, and lifestyles. So this is building the relationship first. You know, we talk about chemistry, and a lot of people say, oh, you know, it's if you have good chemistry, but it's not about chemistry, it's about the relationship. And as you build the relationship, then you can have that chemistry comes. And oftentimes if we jump into a relationship based on chemistry, it's very deceptive. We're going based on a chemical reaction instead of a relational component of actually getting to know the individual. And personalities should complement one another. So yes, personalities can be very different, but they help each other grow. So when you have two different people coming from different personalities, those opposite personalities, they help each other evolve and change and grow. And it's not one of those things where it's a negative, combative type situation. It's a positive that is complementary. And then comparing and contrasting values, beliefs, and lifestyles. It's important to know what those values, beliefs, and lifestyles are. What do you want? Do you want kids? How do you want to discipline your children? How do you want to save money? All of those things need to be taken into consideration. What religion, going to church, how you raise, all those things, how you raise your children. So understanding those values and beliefs and being in line with that. And then next is getting to know the skills for building and maintaining a relationship. So communication skills, again, brought up again, they're key for building and maintaining a relationship. So good communication, it involves having that open self-disclosure, that empathic listening, high congruence. So there needs to be a balance between talking and listening, not cutting each other off, making sure that we're giving each other the space to communicate before we express. And practicing exhibiting a listening posture, known as solar. This is something we talk about where it's squaring off, remaining open in our body, keeping our legs and arms uncrossed, leaning in towards that individual, having that good eye contact, staying relaxed. Often when we have a very stiff or aggressive posture, it comes across very negative, and so it can tend to cause a person to be reactive or defensive or shut down. So it's very important to practice in exhibiting a very relaxed listening posture. And of course, good conflict resolution is very important. Having that mutual assertiveness to resolve conflict, mutual respect for one another, having humility to come and ask for forgiveness or to own up to what you've done wrong, and the resiliency to bounce back. And then we have getting to know the patterns from other relationships that we kind of talked about before. This is finding the common denominator in previous relationships. Was there a red flag about your partner in all these relationships? Which one is at fault? You have to kind of look at those things. It's very important to know that, or knowing that a partner's past, it can give you a clue about their future. And it's so telling. So if someone is really closed off about their past, that is definitely a red flag that you want to be aware of. And then discovering the peripheral, meaningful, and romantic others who play an important role in their lives. And this kind of shows you that circle of others. As you see, there's the peripheral, the meaningful, and the romantic. And then there's you. And so understanding the peripheral, the meaningful, the friendships that they have, are they healthy friendships, or are those friendships negative? Were their past romantic relationships healthy or unstable? And, the important relationships in their life, how do they impact? And then, of course, getting to know the patterns of a family background is key. And I love this. He says a person's childhood experiences are among the strongest indicators of how they will behave as a spouse and parent. This is so true. And it's important to explore the degree of closeness in the family and determine the openness involvement. Again, going back to the family background and the patterns and the relationship with their parents, and are they overly attached, or is there a lack of attachment? Is there no attachment? What does that look like there? Exploring the structure through the formation of roles. What role does each family member play in this person's life, and what role did they play? A person's relationship with a same-sex parent reveals a lot about his or her identity. So what was a relationship with their father? What was their relationship with their mother? Understanding those are key to developing a relationship. And then finally, getting to know the patterns of the conscience. And we talked about that briefly And of course, it says your conscience monitors your thoughts, words, and actions based on a code of values and beliefs, and it helps you see the world from someone else's perspective. And so this is the conscience continuum. And so understanding the conscience, you can have an underactive, this is underdeveloped, this is someone who is very distant or disconnected and often pulls away. Or you have this overactive conscience where they're highly conscious or highly, and they tend to be a bit self-centered, to be honest. This could almost be like a narcissistic type mentality, just very overactive. And what we want is that healthy and active conscience that is mature. And so, in conclusion, the main thing is developing those skills to determine compatibility, building and maintaining a healthy relationship, and learning the patterns that contribute to who you are and who your partner is. Of course, it says consistency should be assessed by comparing your partner's conscience and your relationship, his or her family background, and their relationship with others, particularly past romantic relationships or partners. So these are just some elements to know in order to develop healthy relationship, and I hope that this information will provide you beneficial content to utilize in future relationships. Thank you.